Trans Am Racing Series on CBS Sports Network is sponsored by Pirelli. Power is nothing without control. By Big Machine Vodka Spiked Coolers. Good times deserve better. By Franklin Road Apparel Company. Your fast track to fashion. And by Lion Companies, the national leader in commercial real estate services.
Chris Dyson gets away brilliantly. Hello and a warm welcome to the Trans Am Series presented by Pirelli for our review of the 2021 season. We're here at COTA for the final round in sunny November, but probably one of the few places in America that is so warm at the moment. But the season itself was one of the best we've had in a long, long time. Yes, COVID was a while, but we came out firing on all cylinders. Well, Tony, another year, another long year of pandemic, but racing as well. You made it to the end. How was 2021?
Big picture, amazing. Absolutely amazing year. I'm thrilled. With the Trans Am Series, got the full show in. SVRA is rocking, IGT's rocking, Formula Regionals, and F4 both got their full season in, so I feel blessed. It just goes to show you racing's alive and well. In spite of the pandemic, I think my team did an amazing job managing through the challenges of that. And I'm just feel humbled and relieved and happy.
The season began back in sunny Florida in February at the famous, iconic Sebring circuit. The start of the TA race from Sebring sees Tommy Dreese on the left in the Lucas Mist sponsored car, but alongside him in the all-new colours for 2021 is our champion, Ernie Francis Jr. Adam Andretti in the all-blue car, the Dodge Challenger, challenging already for the lead and dives into second place, chasing down Ernie Francis Jr. Great move by Adam Andretti. Andretti sporting the colours of his late brother, John, in second place, and a slight lock up there. They really are pushing on. We're on board with Tommy Dreese in third. This the first of 27 laps. Dyson starting at the back, choosing to take new tyres instead of starting from the second row. Great to have the Dodge Challenger back. Ken Thwaites, there he is, the fluorescent. Here's the battle for SGT with Oaks and our current champion Lee Saunders from Florida on board with Chris Dyson. Dyson has sided his way back into contention. He's passed Andretti and up to third now, but here's the battle for the lead at the first corner. Francis trying to hold on, but round the outside in the number 8 goes Tommy Dreese. Not quite. He now switches back. Francis Jr. holding on for dear life now, and Dreese trying to get past, but Francis Jr. is a wily fox, and you don't win 7 titles by not being good at defending. And this has been a cracking battle. Here's a look at the SGT battle, and it's Aaron Pierce at the moment in the Corvette holding off Michael Phillips, also in a Chevrolet Corvette. But back with Tommy Dreese now, as he still tries to hand down. Oh no! And he just got a little too early on the gas out of 5 and spins it round. And he's going to be spitting. What a shame for Tommy Dreese. He's got it going again, but he's going to be on the radio apologising, and he is, to the team, saying he just lost his concentration there for a moment. He's regained it, and he's still going. And Tommy Dreese will get some good points out of this, but it'll be bitter disappointment given the fact that he was almost in the lead at one point. Now, back to the leaders, and look at what the plaid number 20 has done from the back. Chris Dyson has scythed his way through to second place and is now putting the pressure on Ernie Francis Jr. In fact, he's gone past Ernie Francis Jr. and takes the lead. What a race for Chris Dyson. These two are friends off track, but that was a monumental move. Oh no, and I say that at turn 7. Having done all the hard work, he spins it round, but luckily has kept it going. He fires it up again, and look, here's the final lap. He's back in contention again and up the inside of Ernie Francis Jr. again. Chris Dyson is on absolutely possessed form. A little touch by both of them there as Dyson had to brake earlier than he wanted to, and Francis almost took him out. But somehow, someway, Chris Dyson put on new tyres, started at the back, and now is going to win the first race of the year after disappointment this time last year. Dyson does it all perfectly this time, and Francis Jr. can do nothing about it as Chris Dyson in the plaid number 20 Ford Mustang wins at Sebring. A monumental victory. Francis Jr. is second, and Adam Andretti in the Dodge Challenger is third.
We had a great start to the season at Sebring. We had to start from the back. We came through the field under green, and we passed for the lead in the first corner of the last lap.
In SGT, it was the DroneWorks Corvette of Justin Oakes who took the win here at Sebring, Justin continuing the success from last season.
Sebring in a Corvette with this much horsepower and downforce is quite an incredible ride. So the fact I made it through there safely, we preserved the car, and we had a pretty commanding win. It's just a major accomplishment for me and the team.
After a great start to the championship in Florida, next it's Road Atlanta in Georgia. We'll take a short break. We'll be right back.
The Trans Am Racing Series on CBS Sports Network is sponsored by Pirelli. Power is nothing without control. By Big Machine Vodka Spiked Coolers. Good times deserve better. By Franklin Road Apparel Company. Your fast track to fashion. And by Lion Companies, the national leader in commercial real estate services.
So a great way to start his campaign for Chris Dyson, but not so much for the poleman number 98, Ernie Francis Jr., who came in second at home in Florida. Now, most people would be happy with second place, but not Ernie. He is used to winning. And the reason is Ernie Francis Jr. is a 7 times Trans Am champion and is reminded of every time he gets in the car. But this would be a very busy season for the 7-time champion. Not only was he doing Trans Am, but coming up to the next round at Road Atlanta, he would turn his hand for the first time ever to single-seater racing in the FR Americas Championship, as well as racing in Tony Stewart's SRX series on CBS. Let's head then to Road Atlanta to see how he got on.
Wet conditions for the start of the TA races. We're on board with the poleman, Tommy Dreesy. And still raining and still very, very wet. Good start from Boris Said in the Dayglow yellow Dodge Challenger. Looks to the inside but can't make it. Ernie Francis Jr. slotting into third place, and Justin Marks in the Corvette in fourth. Up the hill for the first time. If we look at the start again, there's a big incident going on further back in the pack involving the Dodge of Adam Andretti, as you can see there through the mist, just spinning out without any other contact, just wet conditions and a lot of power going down. And he spun out, and so too aquaplaning off Stephen Davidson in the Aston Martin, hitting the wall heavily at 4, and that brought out a red flag. And at the restart, we're on board now with Simon Gregg. Boris Said now leading, followed by Justin Marks in second place. Dreesy has dropped to fourth, and Ernie Francis Jr. now up to third. With over 850 brake horsepower at their disposal, conditions really tough for these very big TA monsters. But Ernie Francis Jr. was carving his way through. A nice move at turn 7 on Justin Marks, and then goes in pursuit of Boris Said. Justin Marks in the red Coca-Cola Corvette was keeping his foot in a drag race with Dreesy still fourth down that long back straight towards turn 10. And by lap 9 of 40, Ernie Francis Jr. in the number 98 was proving to be dealing with the conditions better than Boris Said, who was being a little bit more cautious. And Ernie Francis's move was brilliant. It started here at 6 to take the lead. He just drag brakes into turn 7 and deftly drifts past Boris Said for the lead. Tommy Dreesy, lap 16. And the man in fourth place just literally goes up in smoke. Luckily, he pulls off the race line. But of course, his day was done. Burton Racing, winners this time at Road Atlanta last year with Martin Ragginger. Meanwhile, back at the front, Ernie Francis Jr. had led for most of the race, but a second spurt and now drying conditions meant that Boris Said could put in the lap times in the Challenger, and he began to challenge Ernie Francis Jr. And Boris closing in, Poncho Weaver, who prepares the car for Boris, watching on pensively. Big moment for Justin Marks, his second of the day, as he grass tracks off track at turn 12 and manages to get it back going again, and in the end finishes third. Francis's lead was narrowing down to nothing, and eventually Boris Said down the long straight would use the power to get past. And once Boris Said was into the lead with 7 to go, Boris was never to look back again, and try as he might, Ernie Francis Jr. just couldn't keep with the pace that Boris Said was on. The conditions drying up, and as the checkered flag came out, with Lee Saunders stranded in the SGT with 2 laps to go with no drivetrain, Boris Said takes victory over Ernie Francis Jr., and that's his 18th career Trans Am TA win. Confirmation then, Boris Said with the win for the Dodge Challenger, Ernie Francis Jr. the champion in second place, and Justin Marks third.
I had to really take care of the car. I couldn't just throw it off the road in the beginning. So I was a little cautious in the beginning, but then I was just letting it rip. I mean, that was 10-10s for a long time until I got by Ernie.
The championship after 2 rounds sees Ernie Francis Jr. with a 10-point lead over Chris Dyson, Justin Marks in third, and Adam Andretti in fourth position. Up next, round 3 in the glorious location on the west coast this time of Monterey, California and Laguna Seca. And once again, it was the usual suspects leading the way. The start of the Trans Am TA race, round 3 from the WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca, sees Chris Dyson second in the championship, get ahead of Ernie Francis Jr., the championship leader. Justin Marks, and the 99 just popping out there, takes the wide line through turn 1, and it gives him third place. Currently fourth in the championship, so all the leaders where they need to be. Boris Said also making an appearance in the Dodge as they dive through the famous corkscrew. Ernie Francis Jr. second place, chasing down Chris Dyson. Dyson 10 points behind Ernie Francis Jr. after 2 rounds. As into the pits comes second place, number 98, Ernie Francis Jr., the champion, out of the race. Also out of the race, the number 28, Lou Gilotti of Texas, and smoke pouring into the inside of that car, and Lou had to get out very quickly. At the restart, lap 25, Dyson leads from now Boris Said in second place. Tommy Dreese tries to move up the inside, can't pull it off though. So it's Dyson, Said and Dreese. Tommy Dreese looking to improve on his 5th overall in the championship. Adam Andretti not racing this weekend, so an opportunity for Tommy Dreese, and of course racing at home, the man from Hollywood. And Boris Said in that Dayglow Dodge Challenger, also racing at home for the Poncho Weaver prepared car. Aspen Tarek now in the Mustang, getting the better of Justin Marks. But then drama as Marks and Pintarek came together at the corkscrew, and both men go out, different classes, Pintarek in TA and Justin Marks in SGT, but that would bring out another caution right at the top of the corkscrew, and he just missed his braking point and took David Pintarek out. And at the restart, once again, Chris Dyson would pick it up, but this time Tommy Dreese getting a much better start and challenging Boris Said for second place, but Said defends and goes for an overtake. Oh, a very bold one on Chris Dyson, and they touch. Through goes Boris Said, but the stewards may have something to say about that. Dyson in second now, having been hit by Boris Said. Dreese still third, Masood fourth, and Dyson starting to slow and comes into the pits with a ripped rear tyre, and that takes him out of contention as Boris Said now in a battle with Tommy Dreese for the victory. This the final lap, and it's going to be Boris Said who would cross the line ahead of Tommy Dreese. And as he came out of the last corner to see the checkered flag, the steward's still looking at that incident with Chris Dyson. And in fact, Boris Said was penalised for that incident with Dyson, which gives Tommy Dreese the win, Masood second, Ken Thwaites third, and Boris Said will end up in fourth position ahead of Chris Dyson.
That is a Trans Am race. That's how it's supposed to be. You know, I might have moved a little bit over on boards, but I think he went so deep he couldn't stop it. At least I kept it going. I thought he might give it back, but he was gone.
So Ernie Francis Jr. now only has a 1-point lead after 3 rounds ahead of Dyson, with Tommy Dreese moving to 3rd and Marks down to 4th.
So that home victory at Laguna Seca for Tommy Dreese and the number 8 Lucas Slick Mist Camaro really opened up the TA Championship for 2021. And for the rest of the year, Tommy was a potent force vying for the championship himself. Next up, a wet and soggy Lime Rock.
Atrocious wet conditions greeted the Memorial Day Classic at Lime Rock. It rained almost all weekend long, and Ernie Francis Jr. would lead his arch rival towards the start finish. Chris Dyson racing at home and 1 point behind Ernie Francis Jr. going in to this multi-class race. As you can see from the rooster tails, not easy conditions. Dyson goes to the outside into Big Bend for the first time. Ernie Francis Jr. under pressure, and as he turned in, he just touched the puddle, and that was enough to spin round the championship leader in dramatic fashion. Luckily, nobody else collected him, but Ernie Francis Jr. goes from hero to 0, and away goes Dyson at the front. And Andy Lally, his teammate for that weekend, replacing Masood for the weekend, would go into 2nd place. Pintarik also in the hunt, but once in the lead, the number 20, Chris Dyson, whose father raced here, and he lives just down the road from Lime Rock, so grew up racing here, didn't need a second invitation, and Lally would play spoiler in 2nd place and try and hold off the rest of the field. Conditions not getting any better as the race continued, and there was more drama to follow. Eric Joyner leading the XGT Championship in the Porsche 991. And in SGT, it was Justin Oakes battling hard. Ernie Francis Jr. recovers well, gets ahead of Andy Lally, and would scythe his way through the field in an effort to try and get on level terms again with Dyson and not lose his championship lead. Simon Gregg in the red and black there. Amy Ruman just ahead of this group. Lally in pursuit of Ernie Francis Jr. who again touches another puddle, risking everything. And a drag race down the Samposi straight, and Lally getting the better of this one and diving into Big Ben. But suddenly, where was Ernie Francis Jr.? Disappearing down a side road at turn 1 as we go back on board with the leader, Chris Dyson, who had the best view of all. There's Ernie Francis Jr. parked up, and that's the end of his race here at Lime Rock, and probably the end of his championship lead. Eric Joyner marching on to what would be an excellent XGT victory. And Andy Lally now going in pursuit once again of Chris Dyson as the conditions did improve slightly. But then drama for Ken Thwaites, now in T8, the XGT champion, splashing his way into the tyre wall and causing another caution at turn 1. And at the restart, Dyson would have to do it all again, but Andy Lally, who had just taken part in the very wet, similar conditions for NASCAR the week before and was suffering from a very nasty, blistered foot. So was nursing that as well as trying to race hard, and race hard he did, but up against Tommy Dreese, who was in good form. The Californian getting past Lally down the Samposi straight and into 2nd place. Dreese trying to hold off Lally all the way to the flag, and it was touch and go because the man replacing Masood was in the hunt. Side by side under the bridge, but Dreese somehow holds on and holds the line as they came to the checkered flag. Dyson would take the victory at Lime Rock and the championship lead, with Francis out, Dreese taking 2nd and Lally 3rd.
Lime Rock always puts an extra spring in my step, and coming here in these Trans Am cars, it's an unbelievable feat to drive around this place. The conditions were so treacherous, and we really had to stretch ourselves there, but I was determined to get a win in front of the home crowd, in front of the family, and it really gave me a lot of positive momentum personally heading into the rest of the season.
And Chris Dyson now leads the championship with 112 points.
We performed really well. Unfortunately, alternator on the car failed, but again, being a new car, new team, developing the platform, the chassis, and fitting into Trans Am well, just another data point that we had for next season.
The Trans Am Racing Series on CBS Sports Network is sponsored by Pirelli. Power is nothing without control. By Big Machine Vodka Spiked Coolers. Good times deserve better. By Franklin Road Apparel Company. Your fast track to fashion. And by Ryan Companies, the national leader in commercial real estate services.
Welcome back to our review of the 2021 TA Championship as we turn our attention to round 5, which took place at Mid-Ohio Road Course in much better weather conditions. Good start from Simon Gregg, getting ahead of Dyson. Dreesy in the lead as they come into the braking zone. Gregg just holding on to second place. Nicely done by Simon Gregg as we go on board with the 57 of David Pintarik in the Ford Mustang. All eyes would be on Ernie Francis Jr. starting from the back, one of the contenders for the championship, but he didn't qualify because he was doing SRX in Eldora, but already up to 7th place by the first lap and in contention very much. Meanwhile, good battles. Amy Ruman trying to hold off Ernie Francis Jr. And it wasn't long before the McNichols 23 got the Francis treatment. Look at this for an overtake. Down the main straight. Ruman tries to defend, but Francis, under braking, under the bridge, perfect overtake. Sadly, Pintarik out with a mechanical. Meanwhile, back at the front, Dreesy still leading from Dyson, but look at this, Ernie Francis has now caught. The leading pack is in 3rd place. A cracking finish with all the championship contenders in this group. They were now pulling ahead of the rest of the group until this moment. Ken Thwaites loses his brakes and goes straight into the barrier for a very fast part of the course, and that would bring out the safety car at the restart once again. Dreesy holding off Dyson, this time Francis at the keyhole on the inside. Another brilliant maneuver, but Dyson would come back, got good drive out of the keyhole, and they were side by side, drag racing towards 4 with Dreesy pulling away. Then traffic came into play. Dreesy at the carousel coming up on Mark Drummond in the BMW and then getting stuck behind him, and Dyson chooses this moment to pounce. Brilliant stuff by Chris Dyson in the Atwell Ford Mustang, number 20, to take the lead. And that was timed to perfection. Then drama in the pits as Ernie Francis Jr. comes in, the Mid-Ohio specialist, going on the grass and then having more problems. His gearbox packing up. And that was the end of his era of winning at Mid-Ohio, which has been spectacular. Sadly, Ernie Francis Jr. out of the Mid-Ohio race. Sadly, for 2021, this has been the story of Ernie Francis Jr. in TA. Despite some fantastic runs from the back to the front because of missing qualifying, mechanical gremlins striking again at one of his favorite circuits. Meanwhile, then, Chris Dyson at the front in the Altwell CBD Ford Mustang was on his way to victory ahead of Tommy Dreesy. Dreesy, with flames coming out of the car early on, manages to make it to the podium ahead of Simon Gregg, but it's Chris Dyson who wins again in Mid-Ohio. Behind him, it's Tommy Dreesy, Simon Gregg in 3rd, and Amy Ruman in 4th.
I couldn't be happier, Ben. I mean, we really turned it around after yesterday. I was real disappointed because I knew that we had a pole car with the number 20 Altwell Mustang, and we just didn't get to show it yesterday, but I think we showed it today.
Chris Dyson extending that lead now to 144 points. Tommy Dreesy firmly in 2nd with 132, with Ernie Francis Jr. hanging on in there with 115. As Dyson celebrates, we'll take a short break. We'll be back with more action from TA after this.
With excellent wins at home at Lime Rock and at Mid-Ohio after that, The Ford Mustang of Chris Dyson in the number 20 was flying and definitely in championship contention. Question was, could they do it again and make it 3 in a row at the longest, fastest, and most challenging circuit of all, Road America? Let's find out.
25-lap race with a rolling start. Dyson started behind Boris Said, but soon gets alongside, but is balked by Dreesy, who didn't get off the line well. Boris Said into the lead and dropping back to 4th at the start. Chris Dyson with work to do then at this 4-mile circuit of Road America. Dreesy just slotting into 3rd place there. Cody Ware getting a good start as well, but it was Boris Said who would lead early. A few laps later, though, electrical problems intermittent for Boris, and that put Dreesy in the driving seat with Dyson chasing him hard at turn 6. But there was more cautions to come, and that slowed things down again. And at this point, it was Dreesy from Dyson, then Guy Smith coming in at the request of Dyson. Then Cody Ware and Boris Said had sorted out the electrical problem somehow and was back in action at the restart on board with Boris Said, using the power of the Poncho Weaver prepared Challenger down that long straight at Road America. And getting alongside Guy Smith, the experienced sports car racer, coming in at the last minute and passing him as they go into turn 5 and almost getting past Tommy Dreesy, but they touch. Dreesy goes wide and Boris Said goes through. So very, very tough maneuver by Boris Said on Dreesy. And through goes Guy Smith as well for good measure. But then another mechanical issue just as in mid-Ohio. This time the right front control arm going, bringing Francis into the pits and out of contention. He would get back out again and in fact get the fastest lap. But more drama for Ernie Francis Jr. as he stays in contention, but only just. Meanwhile, Dyson heading for the flag. Cody Ware battling with Guy Smith and Dreesy on the final lap now, chasing down Boris Said. But as they came into the final corner, 14, a tap to the back of Boris Said sent Dreesy round, and that would push him all the way back to 8th position by the end. Dyson would go on to take victory over Boris Said. Another commanding victory for the Altwell number 20 Ford Mustang. Dyson ahead of Boris Said, Guy Smith taking 3rd place, and Oscar Turan in 4th. That victory extending Chris Dyson's lead to 177 points now for Tommy Dreesy in 2nd and Ernie Francis Jr. on 128 in 3rd.
And when you've got Tommy Dreesy, Boris Said, Cody Ware, and I got Guy Smith out there behind me, that's a tall order to stay ahead of those boys, but the car was fantastic today. I felt like I dug really deep and were rewarded with the victory.
And to race in front of that kind of crowd at that venue against some of the best in the business, and to take that win for the 2nd year in a row was just a huge boost for the team.
Also hitting great form at Road America was Eric Joyner. Another win for him, and he continues to lead in XGT.
2021 was a great year for us in Trans Am and everyone in the paddock. It was it seemed like the world started to open up again. We had, I don't know, tens of thousands, maybe 100,000 fans out at Road America. The Trans Am Porsche for us is a dream to drive. It's really great. It has a little bit less horsepower than some of the big V8s, but we do have a little bit of driver aid, which we get to use those a little bit in the dry, obviously in the wet, where in Lime Rock it was wet. We can really take advantage of those driver aids quite a bit. But even with less horsepower, we're able to mix it up with the TA1 cars at certain racetracks.
And the next racetrack was even further north as we headed to Minnesota and to the Brainerd Circuit for the Jed Copham Memorial Race. The challenging circuit of Brainerd, Minnesota for round 7, a combined all-classes race, which would see in TA Ken Thwaites get away well at the start, side by side with Tommy Dreesy, with Chris Dyson just behind in the yellow and white number 20. Thwaites getting past Dreesy as they headed down towards turn 3, the first overtaking place, but Thwaites holding on, and Rafa Matos leading the way in TA2. Dyson making his way past Thwaites as Dreese had already done so early on. Thwaites going from first to third in a matter of just one lap. Meanwhile, Amy Ruman and Ernie Francis Jr. had to start at the back and were scything their way through the field. And then Ernie Francis Jr. only took 6 laps to get up to third place, having started at the back because he didn't qualify because he was racing in SRX on CBS the day before. On board with Dreese, under massive pressure now at the fastest part of the circuit. Dyson challenging for the lead past Dreese, and Francis would do the same. Side by side under the bridge, Francis would hold the advantage here. Dyson off into the lead, and Francis holding on to take second place. Ken Thwaites, though, going off again, spinning out this time, but he would get restarted. Francis now challenging at the Clover corner on lap 19 and takes the lead away from Dyson. Francis looking for his first victory of the year, started at the back but was now leading after 20 laps, and Dreese dropping back but was still holding on to third place. Great battle in TA, but another off. This time it's Chris Dyson going off, having led the race. Dyson getting back after the traffic. Amazingly, Ernie Francis Jr. made it from the back to the front to win his first race of the season ahead of Tommy Dreese. Finally, Ernie Francis Jr. gets the monkey off his back with a win. Tommy Dreese second and Chris Dyson in third.
It's been so tough, man. We've been waiting so long for this win. So many opportunities early on in the season and just didn't go our way. So happy we can go out here and go from the back to win this thing.
And now with 7 rounds in, Chris Dyson, Tommy Dreese and Ernie Francis all very much still in the hunt for the 2021 title. We'll take a short break. We'll be right back. Welcome back to our review of the Trans Am TA Championship of 2021, which now moved for round 8 to Watkins Glen. But there would be more at stake as the championship hotted up. This would be a double-header. An all-classes field at Watkins Glen of over 40 cars, led by TA, dives into turn 1, and it's Ernie Francis Jr. who takes the whole shot ahead of championship leader Chris Dyson. Dyson looking to extend his lead and was putting pressure on early on Ernie Francis Jr. third in the championship. And CD Racing, Chris Dyson's teammate this weekend, Guy Smith coming in. Masood not available, and the former British sports car great getting his second run at Trans Am. But a big incident involving Paul Finks, the rookie points leader Rhett Barco, and this man, Oscar Turan from Panama, brought out a full course yellow. And at the restart, Ernie Francis Jr. would lead the field again. Dyson looking to pounce into turn 1, and a lock-up from Francis maybe gave him an opportunity, but it wasn't to be. Eric Joyner on his way in XGT to yet another win in that resplendent Porsche. He would win XGT from the pole. But more importantly, 4 laps to go, and out goes the leader, Ernie Francis Jr. His engine seizing, and that gave the lead to Chris Dyson. Dreese, though, looking for a way past, and Dreese, though, passing under yellow. You can see the yellow flags out there, and that would mean that he would get a 40-second penalty, and that would give Dyson the win, and also put Guy Smith in second place, and would give Amy Ruman her first podium of the season. So Dreese, despite crossing the line in first place, was penalised for passing under yellow, and in the end, Chris Dyson would extend that lead with a CD Racing 1-2.
I don't know what happened. I did not see a full, if there was a full course yellow, it was the laziest limp yellow I've ever seen.
So Tommy Dreese, not a happy man, but this man, Justin Oakes, was very happy indeed. The Droneworks number 11 Corvette taking another victory in SGT. confirmation in TA. Dyson with the win over Guy Smith, his teammate, and Amy Ruman gets a podium for the first time this season. For the second of the doubleheader at Watkins Glen, it was an all-classes field led by TA, Ernie Francis Jr. in the 98, getting ahead of Chris Dyson, the championship leader. Guy Smith on the outside in the blue and white, and on the inside, Tommy Dreese challenging early on. Boris Said had to start at the back, having not raced on Saturday in the Dodge Challenger, but he was scything his way through. 34 cars and all, but problems for Ernie Francis Jr. as he loses a belt and drifts into the pits to take a look. The Future Star Racing, number 98. Here's Dreese again challenging. He just can't get past the teammate in their Ford Mustangs. But then problems for Tommy Dreese, parked on the guardrail. He had a tyre and suspension issue at turn 4. Here you see it. Gets turned around and thrown into the guardrail and is out of the race with damage. At the restart, Boris Said now challenging Chris Dyson for the lead, having gone through the whole 34 car pack, but Dyson wasn't in the mood to relinquish it. Good muscle car racing. Guy Smith tries to challenge and tries to help defend for Dyson. Ernie Francis was 2 laps down, but got ahead, but it made no difference because Dyson in the yellow and white, number 20, would take the checkered flag and win again. A double-header win at Watkins Glen for Dyson. An emphatic weekend then for Chris Dyson, ahead of Boris Said and Guy Smith, Dyson's teammate, taking third, Ruman taking fourth.
I'm really proud. We got a 1-3 finish for the team, so that's terrific for the points. And to win here at Watkins Glen, 2 in a row after yesterday, this is very satisfying for us, absolutely.
It went better than I could have possibly imagined. 2 race wins and a really healthy lead going into Virginia at a track that I've always loved the most.
We'll take a short break. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Next up, it was VIR, Virginia International Raceway, the location for another vital round of the TA Championship for 2021. The penultimate round of the 2021 TA Championship at VIR saw Chris Dyson in the number 20 Atwell CBD Ford Mustang trying to hold pole position at the green flag, keeping at bay Tommy Dreese in second place as Ernie Francis Jr. and Boris Said battled for third. Boris getting on the inside of the horseshoe in the number 2 Racing Technique SRI Dodge Challenger and taking third just behind Simon Gregg in the number 59. Dreese, the only man who could stop Dyson, but Dyson was in the mood to win. And as he pulled away at the front, the problems were all in his rear view mirror. Behind him, Tommy Dreese had aerodynamic issues when his hood started to lift and get loose, and they couldn't sort it out. But during a safety, Tommy was able to come in. They tried to sort out the problem, and in order to keep Tommy in the fight, they decided to send him out without the hood at all. The aerodynamics weren't going to get any better, but the cooling was going to work with no hood, and out went Tommy, avoiding going a lap down, but he would be right at the back and out of contention. His title hopes drifting away as at the restart, once again, Chris Dyson in the number 20 Atwell CBD Ford Mustang would pull away, this time from Ernie Francis Jr. Boris Said in the Challenger, doing just that. Sadly for Tommy Dreese, though, his 4th stop would put a stop to his hopes, and that said it all. There was more drama to come on track as the leaders came across John Bokum in the black number 86 Ford Mustang. He got out of shape. Chris Dyson had to avoid him, and in so doing, Ernie Francis Jr. behind him got too close to the number 20. In fact, hit the back of Chris Dyson. That damaged the front of Ernie's car, and that meant the Future Star Racing Ford Mustang number 98 had to come in. Power steering damaged, and as you can see, also crash damage to the car itself on the front, and that put Ernie out of contention here at VIR. Here's another look at it. You can see better from here how Ernie just taps the back. It's an innocuous crash, but enough to take Ernie Francis Jr. out of the race. That left Chris Dyson on his own as he powered on to his 7th victory of the year and his 13th career victory, but more importantly, the championship, as Chris Dyson wins the 2021 TA Championship. And confirmation of the results then. Chris Dyson with the win in the Ford Mustang. Forrest Said second. Ken Thwaites on the podium in third. And Kerry Hitt in fourth position.
This means the world to me. I mean, this is one of the most prestigious, oldest running series in the United States. You know, to add this to my IMSA championships and become a Trans Am champion, it hasn't set in yet, but it's a dream come true.
Dyson then takes the championship with 1 round to spare. 3:02 now to Tommy Dreesy's 2:42 and Ernie Francis Jr. on 2:25. Ken Thwaites in fourth now. With the championship in the bag, they all headed next to the final round at the Circuit of the Americas in Austin, Texas. In the perfect end to the 2021 season, the TA race was one of the best of the year, with a nail-biting finish between a champion and a rookie. Ernie Francis Jr. led from pole with Matthew Brabham right behind him for most of the 100-mile race, and there was just 0.2 of a second between them lap after lap. Behind, Tommy Dreesy held third at the start, but Oscar Turan got the better of him, but a late full-course yellow gave Tommy another chance, and he took it on the last lap. The race for the lead, though, was just as intense on those last 2 laps as Brabham finally made a lunge on that final lap to get past the former champion, as Brabham, on his debut Trans Am race, won by inches. Second place went to Ernie Francis Jr. in the Mustang, and third was the Camaro of Tommy Dreesy.
What a race. I had so much fun out there. It was so close, the racing, and there was traffic and all kinds of things going on, yellows and restarts, and I just was trying to take it all in and learn as much as I could. And then, thanks, Dave.
Great job.
Thank you. And then, I mean, we had that caution with 3 laps to go, and I'm like, well, I'll take everything I learned and just throw it down and go all on the line. And, you know, I'm obviously super happy with the result. Obviously thankful to Altwell and all the Chris Dyson Racing guys.
The Brabham legacy alive and kicking, with Matthew Brabham taking that win in the Ford Mustang. Ernie Francis Jr. in second, and Tommy Dreesy, the man who congratulated him, in third position. Oscar Turan, what a season for him, takes fourth place. So here's how it finished. Chris Dyson on 3:02, Tommy Dreesy runner-up with 2:68, and just a few points behind Ernie Francis Jr., the multiple champion, finishing third ahead of Ken Thwaites in fourth. Well done also to Justin Oakes. He wraps up the SGT Championship, and Eric Joyner wins in XGT. And look at their championship. Randy Hale second in XGT and Mike Weathers third. Meanwhile, Justin Oakes holding off Milton Grant in SGT.
What a superb end to the 2021 season. A real nail-biter between Ernie Francis Jr. and Matthew Brabham on his debut, just getting by on the last lap to beat the former champion. What a performance. The Brabham legacy continues. And you'll be able to see all the highlights of Trans Am on the CBS Sports Network in 22. Until then, from me, Jonathan Green, goodbye for now.